Hello and welcome back. I know I spent the previous discussion telling you how it is impossible to exceed the speed of light, because it is. But as a continuation of that faster than light topic, I'm going to tell you how it is possible. Now, before I get too deep into that though, I want to thank everyone who is here, for being here. The occasional comments, a few likes, the handful of subscribers, it's been great. Thanks guys. I'm still trying, I'm still working on the book, we're still getting closer to the release date, and that's part of why we're having these talks now, so that when the books are available, maybe people that aren't familiar with science fiction will understand some of the common tropes a little bit better, and the context that the book is presented in. Also, I'd like to point out I have a second series. There's this discussion on Faster Than Light, which will be a 4-part series, this being part 2. Part 1 I've already done, and used as the opening to the FTL playlist. If you haven't seen it, go give it a look. I'm also doing a second playlist called How to Squad, because Squad is currently my favorite first-person shooter, and has even gotten me inducted into a clan. I'll have another series of videos with some basic info about playing Squad. If you're not interested, feel free to ignore them. Or perhaps you want to come play Squad, I'd be happy to see you there in that community. Even if Squad has no interest to you, I do still talk a little bit about science fiction while I'm there, because it's me and I can't not. Mostly just to explain all the things that Star Wars did wrong, because there's a lot of those. Anyways, that'll be the second separate series, which also already has a video posted in it, teaching how to use a LAT or HAT kit in the Squad game. Because I'm using Squad content to talk about Squad, I've decided to come back to my other great love, Battletech, while we talk more in-depth on the heavier science-related topics. The gameplay you see in the background is still from the Battletech game, like I mentioned in the first couple videos. I've already played through the campaign once before, and I've now downloaded all the expansion packs, and was going to play through a second time to see how much the game changed. If you haven't seen those videos, and if you're finding my little channel here in the middle of the series, then if you'd like, you could go back and watch those, start from the beginning, so we're all on the same page together. This is still the same playthrough from those videos. It's a little later in the campaign. I've played through 2 of the main missions that advance the storyline, and this here is one of the insignificant side missions, side quests if you will. The DLC has added a lot of types of those generic side missions. The early game with the smaller mechs was a little more dynamic than it was without the DLC, and I particularly enjoyed that. The fast small mechs are where I like to be when I play the tabletop game. Aside from including more of the political and national factions from the tabletop game into the computer game, the DLC has added many types of mechs, many of the classics I'm very familiar with, and some of the new ones that I had to look up because I haven't played the canon tabletop game in a while. It's been good, it's been worthwhile, slightly underwhelming, but it certainly offers more variety and more content than the base game did. And variety is the spice of life, right? It's not just vanilla anymore, we got Neapolitan. It's still just ice cream, but it's slightly better ice cream now. Before I get too deep into the game, where was I? Is that an atlas? That's an atlas back there. My enemy has an atlas. That is the biggest, nastiest, meanest mech there is. I don't know if I'm gonna make it out of this one alive, guys. I'll do what I can. I'm gonna have to play sneaky. I'm gonna try and take out his accomplice first, just so I only have to worry about one thing at a time, even though now there's another party has joined the battle and it's a 3-way slugfest. Before I get too deep into the game, where was I? How can we exceed the speed of light? Well, we can't. But I'll tell you the best way we can do it anyway. For a little recap from the previous video, I mentioned the speed of light is really fast. It's 186,000 miles per second, or 299,792 kilometers per second. To start with, one thing that is actually moving faster than the speed of light is the universe itself. The farther away from Earth we look, the faster it is expanding. You go far enough away, and it's actually expanding faster than the speed of light. but that's a complicated example, so let me expand on that a little further. Because it's not the galaxies out there near the edge of the universe that are moving faster than light. In fact, they should hardly be moving at all. Instead, it is the universe itself that is moving, the medium that those galaxies are suspended in. As an example, if someone were to throw a rubber duck into a river, the duck is going to move away from you, but not because the duck is moving, but that the river, the medium holding the duck, is what's moving. Beyond a specific distance, like I said, it's not that the galaxies are moving, but the universe holding them is moving faster than light. Which means there's a whole slew of galaxies out there we cannot and will never see, because they are moving away from us faster than the light leaving them is traveling. Because the universe is expanding faster than the light, no light will ever reach us. There will be no light for us to see, and we won't be able to get eyes across that void. Oof. See, that's what I'm talking about. That atlas just one-shotted that guy. I got goosebumps. This is scary stuff. Anyway, there's a real-world example of faster than light, or at least a mathematical example, because it's beyond the observable. But back to the topic of getting people beyond the speed of light. Nothing with mass may exceed the universal speed limit. And that's just the way physics works. And that leaves us with two options. One of those being the still misunderstood and relatively unexplored subject of dark matter. And that's a dark, shadowy place that I will not go, just because we still know so little about the topic. The only other option that leaves us is with something that stretches the laws of physics a little bit. Part one of that being, because nothing with mass may exceed the speed of light, we just need to take away mass from something, right? But reducing the mass of an object to zero is impossible unless you manage to conveniently find some element zero, like is used in the Mass Effect franchise of video games, which I also love. But again, that's going down the line of dark matter and dark matter type substances. So far as we know, it's still impossible. It's impossible to reduce the mass of an object to zero, much less the mass of a spaceship and its crew. So instead of manipulating the mass, or like in the earlier example, the rubber duck, what if we manipulated the space? Manipulated the river? As much as I don't like to admit it, Star Trek-style warp drives are our best real-world chance at faster-than-light travel. But there's always a but in there. There's a lot of problems with building a warp drive. One of those being energy. Before I get too deep down that rabbit hole, let me explain what a warp drive is, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. In my earlier example with the rubber duck and the river, I explained that it is impossible for objects to exceed the speed of light. But because of the expanding volume of space, those objects in it may exceed the speed of light relative to each other. A warp drive does not manipulate or affect the object, but rather the space itself. We cannot accelerate the duck in the river, it is beyond our reach now. But we can increase the speed of the river's current. Warp drive does not accelerate the ship, but rather distorts and bends the volume of space itself around the ship. Like drawing two dots on a sheet of paper, and then folding the paper so that the dots touch, rather than trying to move the ink through the page. It's a sneaky trick, isn't it? The math to accurately explain that concept is beyond me. And it's not something I'd be readily able to teach or explain through YouTube. And the math isn't the only problem with warp drives. Otherwise, we'd have them already. Getting enough energy to run one is. They take an exorbitant amount of power. And by that I don't mean that they have to have their own designated nuclear reactor to operate one. I mean several orders of magnitude beyond that. I mean like converting the entire planet of Jupiter, or at least an equivalent mass to that. Not only turning that much mass into our energy, but doing that every single second of the warp drive's continuous operation. Oof. Alright, there's one less to worry about. Anyway, warp drives. I mean, not only is that a stupid amount of power, but the logistical limitations of sustaining that power make the warp drive as near to impossible as you can get, and still have it as one of the options on the table. Personally, I think the only feasible fuel sources for a warp drive would be something like a black hole. Which, by the way, would work even better for a conventional non-space warping power plant. But that's a different topic for a different video. Controlling black holes, using them as engines, or anchor points for shell worlds, or even indeed just manufacturing them is a tangent beyond the scope of this video. Or I might start talking about exotic matter and creative negative energy density and... Anyway, with an Alcubierre, or warp drive, it creates a bubble around the ship, contracting and expanding space-time. Contracting in front of the ship and expanding it behind the ship. Not moving the ship faster than light, but rather moving the physical space around the ship. For a moment, let's set those problems aside. Say not only do we build such an advanced and complex engine, we have the economical power to do so, and we manage to solve the power source issue, and now we have a fully functional warp drive and ship and a willing crew. But what will happen when we use it? Because up to this point in human history, such a thing has never been done. We're speaking purely in speculative theory here. No one knows what will happen when we light that candle. Will the warp field be controllable? Would it shake the ship apart? Will it smash the ship inside against the inside of the bubble? Will the bubble expand uncontrollably, engulfing and crushing the whole universe, leaving the crew in the ship trapped to spend the rest of their lives watching in horror? Does it affect the living tissue of the crew differently than inanimate matter of the ship? Are they liquefied inside their spacesuits, or popped like pimples by the field's forces? Does the warp remain even after the engine is shut down, leaving the ship drifting for an eternity? Would nearby ships or planets be torn apart by the warp field's effects? Would the space, or the parts of space that the warp field passed through, remain distorted forever, accelerating anything that entered into it? Again, at this point, it's all theory and no one knows for sure. Remember back in the 1940s when the first atomic weapons were being built, and there were those in the scientific community that speculated they may ignite the very atmosphere on fire. So who knows? Maybe nothing will happen, maybe everything will happen. Prospect doesn't sound very good though, does it? Well, I never said it was a good option, just that it's possible. It's not easy to get around the universal speed limit. There are other options out there, but there are even slimmer possibilities, like the Einstein-Rosen bridge, better known as a wormhole. These are purely theoretical. We don't know if they actually exist, how to find them if they do, or how to make or manipulate them if they do. If there is such a thing as a wormhole, they probably wink in and out of existence so fast that not even light can get through them. Stephen Hawking suggested using something called the Casimir effect to try and stabilize a wormhole. But trying to manipulate a wormhole is moot until we can prove they actually exist or not. But say they do exist, there's still so much unknown and so much danger around them that who knows if we'd still be able to use them, or if it'd be safe or even possible to use them for transportation. There are such a long shot, it's so far-fetched, I personally don't consider them an option, but I'm sure if I hadn't mentioned them, someone in the comments would have given me grief about it. Besides, if I was going to try to explain wormholes any further, I would have to start getting into the subject of string theory, and that is also a topic deep and intricate enough that it would be best left to its own video to try and explain it properly. Oh, that autocannon has a lot of missiles. I'm amazed I survived that. Anyway, there you have it. That's a rough, brief overview of our best hopes for faster-than-light travel. For now, the closest we have to faster-than-light travel has been done through something called quantum entanglement, which was demonstrated back in 2015. I think I'm remembering that right. Anyway, the scientists using quantum entanglement were able to instantaneously transmit a single particle from a laboratory on Earth's surface to a receptacle on a satellite in orbit. No way. I just headshotted that guy. I took down an Atlas with a lance of medium mechs. I've got goosebumps. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. That shouldn't be possible. The Atlas is the biggest, scariest thing in the game. Whew. Okay. For a little elaboration on quantum entanglement. It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat, if you're familiar with that idea. Because until you open the box, you don't know if the cat is alive or dead, just that it is in the box. Because the one particle in the entanglement is both positively and negatively charged at the same time. It must be treated as both, because you don't know until you look at it. Another example using a wishbone from turkey dinner on Thanksgiving. If we both hold on to it and we broke it, I'm going to have one piece of the bone and you will have the other. If I get the little piece of the bone, then we both know you have the big piece of the bone. But, because remember there's always a but, it can only transmit a single particle or electron in one spot to the other. And they will be polar opposite. If one is positively charged, the other will be negatively charged, which could be used to give us a very slow and limited FTL method of communication. You only get an on and an off state. It's a single bit in serial data. So it's extremely slow and limited. And both parties will see the results, but neither party will know who caused which to be what. So it's not even really FTL communication, it's more like FTL knowledge transfer. We're also working on using quantum entanglement and mechanics to build quantum computers, and they're going to be crazy fast and crazy powerful when compared to modern traditional computers, but that does, and as far as we know, can never be used at a macroscopic level for transportation or travel. I gotta stop there before I drag this on any longer or confuse myself anymore on accident. And let's see if I can finish this guy off. Oof, yep, there he goes. One down for the count. I gotta get to a spot where I can save because I faced an Atlas early game, with mechs half its weight, and I survived. I pulled it off. That should not be a thing. That Atlas should have just walked through the forest and smashed us into the ground. Oof. Yeah, he's down too. Alright. All the bad guys are dead. I get to go home. I get to save. Because I'm still alive. Like, I can't believe it. The likelihood of back-to-back headshots on the same target is extremely low, because like the tabletop game, this RTS game uses dice. It's a game of chance. I'm awestruck. And I didn't even take any significant damage. It's one for the record books, in my opinion. Ooh, and there's all 3 parts. Look at that, 1, 2, 3. And I get to take 4 parts home as salvage. I'm claiming a whole Atlas as salvage this early in the game. That's... Here, I'm going to take this too, just because catapults are big. I can't believe it. This DLC has definitely done something, because that has changed the entire outlook for the rest of the game. I have an Atlas now, and it's super early in the game. I can't believe it. Anyway, if you're still here, thanks for watching and hanging out with me, watching my content. I hope this interests you. Stay tuned for the next one as we continue our discussion on faster-than-light travel. Next, I plan to discuss the effects of long-distance space travel on the human crew. If we did manage to make FTL ships a thing. Here, I'm going to put this one in storage. And now I have an Atlas sitting in my mech bag. I'm... Whew, man. Okay. I gotta save. See you guys on the other side. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for playing. You guys are fantastic.